Hello, team. Welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map. Pretty sparse on the right hand side, and a lot of land on the left. And there's four trade routes on the top here. This is the only trade routes on the map. Both players just tried to pick close to them, which makes a lot of sense. This is a ton of eco and a good launching point to take the rest of the map. We'll see where both players decide to go now that this area cannot be picked. Our two players today are Imphenzia in blue and Romad Quantum Scientist in red. Imphenzia being one of the devs of the game. For those of you that do not know, both these players are very accomplished players, top of the ladder. Very excited and interested to see what they get up to here. Romad is going to go into the bottom right here. There's a bunch of oil that is in play. Not sure yet where Imphenzia is going. Top left. Impenzia's in the top left. Romad is going to spawn in the bottom right. Both players are going to start pretty far away from each other, so there's going to be a decent amount of time for build-up, where both players can macro, start to build the economies. And opening-wise, it'll be very interesting to see what both players go for. Romad has a lot of gas, as mentioned, so potentially an airport, more like factories for tanks or something. We're hearing Imphenzia's airports go down. Double airport and a dock for Imphenzia in the top left side. And Imphenzia, there's no real gas close to where Imphenzia is spawned. And these are heavy gas buildings. So securing a first gas and then a subsequent gas will be very important for Imphenzia. Imphenzia might know that this isn't where Romad's going to go in the north, so that they have time to do this. Romad actually, I didn't even notice, but Romad went for a very cool, started here and then went across so that they could pre-build this town and port for an economic start. 3 factories, it's probably gonna, it could be all tanks. Tanks could work very well on this map since there's a lot of open fields for them to roll around in, to frolic in. Barracks for Romad close to the town. I like this play. Get some capping infantry out. Imphenzia is also following up with the barracks after the 2 airports and the dock. Presumably Imphenzia's plan for the first gas is going to be this one. I didn't even see that there's a gas here. So just disregard everything I've said. So there's Imphenzia's first gas. Potentially this is the second gas. This transport boat likely going to ferry the infantry across this island with all the other trade routes on it. 2 strikers as the first units coming out of the airport for Imphenzia, who puts down another barracks, which is a good play. And barracks are like the most efficient capping units in general. And so having more of them, your economy speeds up. Both players know this. We can check the economies. 332 for Imphenzia and 415 for Romad, which makes a lot of sense because Romad went for this town and port immediately. Airport for Romad near the town. And a missile boat for Imphenzia. So missile boats, this is kind of a cool, I like Imphenzia's spot in general here because if getting all of these trade routes and then packing this little lake thing with some missile boats will make it so that these are pretty strong, like defensively. It'll be hard for Romad to actually get rid of these trade routes if Imphenzia decides to take them. And Imphenzia has a kind of natural choke here that they could dig in and defend, and it'll be hard for Imphenzia or Romad to break through necessarily. We'll have to see if Romad's tanks get up to the north quickly and stop this from happening. We heard a farm go down for Imphenzia on this first city. Industries are super valuable. So the best, my understanding is the best eco you can go for is industries, these things, and then ports being the next one, and then towns, and then cities, in that order as like the best things to go for. Trade routes obviously like change the math a little bit. When you get 2 trade routes that are connected, you get a cargo ship, like a merchant ship that is able to like give you a ton of economy. worth roughly, with the whole town and port, apparently it's 24 territories worth. Each territory being a section on the map. We'll just check the economy and see how this goes. Imphenzia is at 404, Romad at 487. Imphenzia's got across this gap with 4 infantry. You'll start capping the town locations. And Romad's slowly capping to the bottom left. 3 tanks out in front, 2 in the back capping. Tanks are very good capping units as well. They're just more expensive, and so, I mean, infantry in a lot of ways like a little bit more versatile when it comes to capping, and they can cap mountains a little bit better. They don't have as much of a speed penalty. 3 SAMs for Romad, which are just as protection. I think if Imphenzia were to start close somehow and have airports, starting with the SAM production at this point for Romad is always going to pay off as well, because SAMs are generally, I mean, this is a perfect map for airports. Imphenzia is going for a depot to start collecting all the gas, because there isn't a second refinery that's going to be super quick, and there's, again, like a lot of gas units for Imphenzia. Blue's got 2 missile boats that are starting to cap, helped out by this 1 transport boat. 3rd missile boat on the way, and the 7th and 8th striker for Imphenzia are building right now. We can see that Romad's going for strikers. I have to keep switching the viewpoint in the replays to see what they can see, and there's a second gas for Romad, which makes a lot of sense. 3 factories going for a lot of tanks. Tanks are going to use a lot of that gas and need a lot of that gas. And if they run out of gas, then they're super vulnerable, as you would expect. 600 income for Romad and 546 for Imphenzia. Romad sending these tanks up to the north is a great call, because if Imphenzia had gone for some super, super greedy like trade route already, these tanks could shut it down. Potentially. I mean, with 8 strikers, it's going to be a lot harder, because Imphenzia's range of airports, this blue line is where the strikers can go, so they can really defend these towns. It's quite a good build. Another industry for Imphenzia, and a factory is put down by Romad in the bottom left, which I do like. And there's the 3rd farm for Imphenzia. I think both players are in relatively good positions here. 594 income for Imphenzia and 643 for Romad, who has these 4 tanks in the north and are scouting that there is no trade route here. They have to move through this forest and mountain and able to scout this trade route. The missile boats for Imphenzia are starting to cap all the water and making use of this transport boat to send the infantry over here, which makes a lot of sense, into this choke point. We heard another airport go down for Romad in this little circular mountain. Commandos and infantry out of the barracks for Romad, who's about to get into first contact situation. It'll be a big infantry fight in the bottom of the map here. We'll have to keep an eye on that. And here come the strikers for Imphenzia that will be able to clean up 4 tanks. 727 income for Romad, 710 for Imphenzia, who's starting this first town for what I assume is going to be the trade routes. Tanks are going to be in a lot of trouble here. They can shoot up. You can see the tanks actually firing at the strikers, but they're not able to do much. And Imphenzia continues to ferry infantry across. I mean, these infantry are in a tough spot, but they technically could have striker support. All 4 tanks get cleaned up. Romad strikers are actually going to support the infantry in the bottom. And with 2 airports, both players are going to have a bunch of strikers pretty soon. Romad's on 2 gas. Imphenzia is still just on the one with the depot. And you can see just how much 2 airports worth of strikers and boats, including a transport ship that's actually hasting, how much gas that actually takes. Another factory for Romad in this mountain range. Infantry skirmishing with tanks. And I heard, yeah, 2 airstrips for Imphenzia close to the trade routes, which is huge. I mean, these 2 airports are now full, right? So they can't produce airplanes once they're full. And so by building the airstrips, Imphenzia is going to free that up and allow the airports to start producing planes again, and also get more coverage on the right-hand side of the map. We can see now where these airstrips can go, all the way over here, this blue line. Romad going for a dock, which I kind of like this play. Missile boats here could be really sweet because of all the strikers. And I wonder if that's what Romad's plan is. Good number of infantry for red here. And some infantry fighting boats. There's a lot going on in the game already. Multiple fronts. Tons of SAMs just at home for Romad. I wonder if it would be better served for these SAMs to move forward, because I don't know where Imphenzia could have... I mean, if Imphenzia put, like, the airstrips here, I suppose after the air strikers landed, they could get to the main base, or get pretty close to it. But otherwise, I don't think these SAMs are going to come into play. That being said, maybe Imphenzia's airstrip on the north can hit the dock. Who cares? We'll see what happened and what goes on. 875 income for Imphenzia and 847 for Romad, so it's pretty much tied at this point. Tanks tanking on missile boats. I couldn't even tell you if this is good for the tanks or good for the missile boats. And so that's why we're just going to stare at it. So 4 tanks take out 1 missile boat when it's a 4v3 situation. This 1 tank is just 1v1ing another missile boat. Apparently this is good for tanks. Tanks taking on missile boats. Looked relatively strong for the tanks. I'd assume Imphenzia's second gas is probably going to be on the way relatively soon, and expect it to be in the north here. Strikers against the tanks. This is where if these SAMs were even a little bit closer, this could look a lot different. Not a lot different. I mean, the strikers would still be able to take out a bunch of the tanks, but they might not be able to wipe all the tanks like this. This is a great location for more SAMs, and it's still tank SAM from Romad. Those black plumes of smoke from the planes indicates that Imphenzia is out of gas. And this fight in the bottom left is going really well for Romad. A good mix of artillery. Some SAMs are showing up to, you know, defend this army. And interceptors from Imphenzia, which I like because of the air support. I mean, interceptors here would be great for Imphenzia. It's really just a question of gas right now, I think. So here comes another town. Imphenzia is ecoing up. Built the first port. Clearly going for all the trade routes. All 4 of them. Romad currently controls this fourth territory for the trade route for that town. So Imphenzia is going to have to cap. It slows it down a little bit. Both players are rolling in money at this point. 944 income for Imphenzia and just over 900 for Romad. Imphenzia's first factory of the game goes down at perfect timing. By the time this factory finishes, it'll be just in time to defend this push of red if Romad decides to go further towards Imphenzia's base. Unfortunately for Imphenzia, these 2 interceptors aggroed to this 1 SAM. Unless it... Yeah, okay, so this is the move command from... Or the engage directive from Imphenzia. So naturally, I guess these interceptors wanted to go that way. They take out an artillery piece and then sent home. Good value from Imphenzia. This airport is making helicopters for Romad. Which helicopters over here could be pretty decent. I mean, the interceptors would do quite well against helicopters, but they're very versatile and mobile. Impenzia's got this second refinery, which is a huge boon to the planes, because they're going to be able to fly more once this thing is actually done. It's 3, there's a 4th factory now for Romad in the bottom, so it's a lot of production that's going to be flooding this field relatively soon. Here come all the planes. There's only rather 2 SAMs that are going to be in position to deal with this, and it's just going to be so many strikers that the SAMs are going to get wiped relatively quickly. We can go big picture now for a second just to see what's up. A lot of SAMs on the right-hand side for Romad in great position to defend the main base of Red. And this is where 2 SAMs just aren't quite enough, as expected. I mean, this is 4 airstrips / airports worth of planes that are going. Romad sends out the strikers on a haste move to get in the mix here. It's almost good that Imphenzia is going to leave, because there's enough planes for blue that they might even just be able to kill this many strikers. Here come the tanks. Third, okay, so I don't even know when this refinery went down, so Imphenzia may have got that before. These tanks could take it out. Does Romad even see it? Romad still does not see this refinery as of yet. But Romad's going to beeline towards this refinery, which is huge. I mean, that would be a big snipe if Romad can pull that off. So 2 destroyers and a missile boat in the north for Romad. Unfortunately, none of the red boats could hit this blue refinery. It'd be a pretty sweet move if Romad sent boats up there and actually sniped that from the water, but I don't think that's what could happen. Here come 4 helicopters, and Romad's now transitioned this second airport into interceptors. I think 4 helicopters is probably like the best amount of helicopters, at least for me personally. And the key here is just get the max value out of these things. Good diversion though, because none of these interceptors are now showing up to deal with the helicopters, because they've all been sent to try to destroy the tanks. I don't suspect that Red's going to be able to get on that top of that refinery, but it is possible. Just want to check the rest of the map real quick, see if we're missing anything big. 2 tanks getting by, potentially 1 actually. This one's going to get taken out, but 1 tank can destroy a refinery relatively quickly. So this is a little bit of a tough spot for Imphenzia, who reacted very well to the move from the tanks, but unfortunately 1 got through, and all the planes are still out, so they're not going to be able to get back and then go out again to destroy this 1 tank. Romad's found this refinery at this point, close to a factory that Imphenzia has made. 4 helicopters potentially going to be able to get rid of this. When I say potentially, I suspect that this is going to be a 1-2 punch on the gas of Imphenzia. It's a great coordinated play from Romad. Imphenzia is just continuing to eco though, and building on those trade routes, which 4 trade routes is just an enormous amount of income. So the top refinery got taken out. This bottom one will. We can see the gas situation of Imphenzia. Luckily, there's a depot that still has some gas in it, because it's only 1 refinery at this point for blue. But this is huge. Imphenzia's cleared up this peninsula, so has all the control of all these land territories. 3 ports, the 3rd one just finished, so here comes this first, second, and 3rd trade route immediately. This is going to generate a ton of economy. Imphenzia has to rebuild both of these refineries. Really no choice. There's also town in the top. Imphenzia's got 1,000 money in the bank up, making 1,300 income. And Romad a little bit more strat for cash at 1,200. But both players have pretty good ecos. Imphenzia's built the 4th port, which over time is going to be huge. I want to see what Romad's building out of this. Okay, so it's still interceptors and strikers out of the bottom 2 airports. Imphenzia's got 2 SAMs showing up into this field. 2 SAMs against this many helicopters, though, it'd still be very difficult for the SAMs to do a ton, especially if these helicopters all attacked at once on the SAMs. And Imphenzia has pulled up a decent amount of infantry here to go for a push through this field. Great use of the tanks that just jump on those SAMs. Very fortunate for Red there. Love that these are SAMs from Imphenzia to try to defend this refinery, but Romad's on top of it and snipes the gas again. And Romad's got the 3 gases on the right-hand side of the map. The dock, a factory, and 2 barracks here for Imphenzia. I love this play. Imagine missile boats for blue right here. It's so strong. It would be so strong. And even destroyers would be able to get rid of some of those, at least one of those or no, I guess not, just the dock. But either way, controlling that body of water is going to be huge. There's a reason why Romad would go for that. Good fight here, but with 3 helicopters against 2 SAMs and a handful of interceptors, these helicopters are actually going to go down, so Imphenzia is going to clean this up. Synchronized explosion of the helicopters, nice, calculated. 2 missile boats, 2 destroyers hanging out at the top for Romad. I wonder what Romad's going to do here with these transport boats. It's going to be a lot of economy for blue pretty soon. We can see 1,400 almost for Imphenzia, but that being said, I mean, Romad still has 1,330. This is a very close game. Another dock and a submarine pen for Imphenzia here. All infantry for blue on the big open field in the left. Combined arms of SAMs, artillery, and infantry for red, and I assume the planes are going to clash again. We need to go big picture. It's a lot of fronts here in this game. Strikers taking on those SAMs. They're going to clear that factory in the bottom left. This airstrip for Romad is in a great location. SAM's doing work against infantry. That's the firecracker that we hear. And another airport for Romad. I didn't even see any of this. Okay, so Romad's got a whole town port on the way in 3 industry, and that's where the extra income is coming from. Romad's just going for this here. There's this point when an opponent puts down like a bunch of production, where if you jump on it quick enough, you can get to it before any of the buildings really start producing at, you know, like in full capacity. Like, they'll only have a few units done. I'm not really sure if Romad's missed that window, but this is a big deal of the map. If Imphenzia is able to stabilize here, it's going to put all of this at risk for Romad, and just almost secure the fact that these trade routes are never going to go down. Romad's sending the strikers out to try to go against all these tanks through forest. The tanks are still going to do a lot of damage. The 2 missile boats are trying to motor their way back because the missile boats are going to be huge to try to aggro these strikers. 2 more SAMs show up for red, which is going to be a huge benefit. And with this many tanks, I'm not sure if both the sub-pen and the dock are going to go down, but surely one of them will. That being said, it's a lot of boats for red, and on the bottom left of the screen, we can just see the whole parade of SAMs showing up. And if these SAMs get situated, the planes for Imphenzia are not going to be able to do as much work as they probably could, or that Imphenzia would hope. And I think this is why these 2 factories are going down. This is a huge point in the game. So Imphenzia is actually keeping this alive longer than I thought. The dock finally goes down. And the sub-pen will as well. We have to look at the rest of the map. Red's taking a great fight here. And tons of SAMs. So I think what's going to be interesting is if Imphenzia can muster the ground army to deal with the left-hand side. This is unfortunate for Imphenzia that this got knocked out. 4 infantry, this is great for Imphenzia. I wonder if these infantry could jump on that gas. Income is super important at this point. 1344 for Romad, and as expected, almost 1800 now for Imphenzia. So this town, this city, the city under construction for Romad on the bottom left is really important, and a very good call. I mean, Romad knows that there's 4 trade routes. So Romad also knows that eco-wise, every little bit helps. And so that bottom left city, very important. I think if Imphenzia can turn this money and this huge eco into the army to defend, keep this all alive, I mean, it'll be very difficult for Romad to deal with it. And that's what we hear. We hear 4 more factories going down. No, 3 more factories, pardon me, on the left-hand side. There's 2 more factories on the right-hand side. And the SAMs are going to jump on this, but now all of this production is going to start kicking in for blue. Romad keeps sniping this gas, which is enormous. I'm not really sure how effective the trades have been, like how many planes Romad has lost. There's going to be a 3rd striker going down here. Kind of surprised it isn't. Oh, it landed before these planes could go get it. And more factories for Imphenzia. And they're on the right-hand side. It's super important that none of these go down. And that's why Imphenzia is rushing over to try to defend all the little mini tanks, the SAMs, from trying to destroy this city. Can the SAMs get destroyed, this town, pardon me, can they actually pull this off? Little firecrackers giving it their best. I mean, if this is the, you know, not, like, it's the least important town in some ways. It only destroys 1 trade route, I think. Because these 3 are actually connected, but that's still huge. That's a great play. Imphenzia will be looking to rebuild that as quick as possible. I need to start switching the map around more because there's a lot going on. Imphenzia is rebuilding the refinery. The city is fully up for Romad. There's nothing defending it, but there's no real way that Imphenzia is going to be able to get down there to try to destroy it with any unit type. This all SAM army going. This, if Romad loses all these SAMs, that's going to be a little bit tough. And I don't think worth it. Now that there's almost 5 factories here, the SAMs are going to have a tough time, especially if they try to enter the mountains. Those SAMs are so useful to defend all those airstrips that Imphenzia has. That's why I think it's important to keep them alive. We'll have to see how that develops. Another dock for Imphenzia somewhere. I'm thinking on the right-hand side. It's got to be on the right-hand side. Interceptors, how many interceptors does it take to kill an airstrip? Who knows? This is actually a rocket. Yo, so there's a dock and a rocket. How is this? Yo, this is Romad's rockets? Yeah, this is Romad's rocket. Romad's building like the closest rocket. One of the closest rockets we've ever seen, I think. But Imphenzia can see it. Did we see that right? Does Imphenzia know this is happening? No, not quite yet. Imphenzia does not know that this rocket exists. I mean, a rocket right here could destroy so many things. So many of the things would die if that rocket gets off. Jeez, phrasing. 1536 income for Romad, 1538 for Imphenzia. We're half an hour into this game and it could not be closer. I mean, it could, but you know what I mean. This many planes against this many boats, there's not actually that many missile boats. I think the strikers can take this, even though it's not going to be the most ideal of trades. This dock is relatively important for Imphenzia to be able to get up, and I assume Imphenzia is just going to build another dock even if this one were to fall. Great cleanup from the blue strikers. I can't imagine that dock goes down. Congo line of Sams taking on a combined arms army of blue, who now has 5 factories. The city is built. Both players keeping on top of that eco. And that's why they're both very close in it. Doc does in fact stay alive. I wonder if Imphenzia can see this quite yet. So Imphenzia is pushing to retake this entire peninsula. And I mean, a bunch of artillery here in the choke point would be super good, I think. Romad's doing a great play. Can Romad actually just hit this town? My apologies that I have to always change the viewpoint whenever I want to see the lines of the other player. Just the way it is. 5 strikers are not going to be able to kill this town in time. Especially since they aren't, unfortunately, able to be targeted. I think Romad couldn't quite reach that town. That's why they're just on a dot command. This is those missile boats built at the beginning of the game. For Romad, gonna get a great cleanup on the way home on those strikers. 4 Sams from Romad in the forest, also gonna be able to do decent work. Probably take out 1 or 2 strikers if they get lucky. And now that they're parked out in this, I mean, it's too bad that for Romad that all these blue artillery is showing up, because Sam's parked out by an airstrip would be brutal to deal with. It's one of the strongest plays you can do with Sams, is just find your opponent's airport and then build this, like, group the Sams right beside the airstrip or the airport, and then anytime the planes take off, they're immediately engaging Sams. Imphenzia actually went for this energy well on the far right, which I like. Romad did a good job to scout it. At this point, Imphenzia definitely sees this rocket. I'm surprised that Imphenzia doesn't see that rocket. I guess rockets do have stealth. They do have stealth, so I guess I just have underestimated how much stealth they actually have. These 2 factories from Imphenzia, I really like that they're here. Defending this gas is huge, and also if Imphenzia can build up an army, pushing into this field is going to be huge, especially if there was a situation where Romad actually pushed too deep. Then this army could actually encircle things or cut them off. Still no sight of the rocket for blue. And we gotta see how, so it's 2/3 of the way done. The rocket is, there's still like the top part and the cap. So if Romad, pardon me, can defend and keep this rocket alive, that will be the play of the game. I don't know how this just got destroyed. I guess it's the planes. 1,600 income for Romad, almost 1,800 for Imphenzia. Romad continues the eco with ports. Because of this 5 factories, Imphenzia is starting to push back through this forest, through this open field, rather. Like, it's a huge army. There's not a ton of Sams. I mean, there's opportunities for Romad to find damage at different spots, but both players are obviously multitasking quite a bit here. Second dock for Romad, which matches the second dock for Imphenzia on the right-hand side. I didn't think that part of the ocean was going to be that important, but clearly it now has become super, super important. These artillery pieces linking up with these ones. I mean, Imphenzia pretty much has this on lock on the left-hand side. What Romad needs is this rocket to fire. There's enough gas. Romad's done a good job. I still want to know if Imphenzia sees this. Imphenzia doesn't see that rocket. This is going to be very unexpected. Romad going for this port will definitely get it. It'll probably just cost a lot because of the number of SAMs and missile boats that are here. So how many planes go down because of this? I wasn't really counting. I'm trying to look at the rocket at the same time. Fortunately for Romad, a lot of those planes get out, way more than you would think. And here comes the rocket. At this point, Imphenzia hears it and would know. But there's not much that can be done now. Unless these SAMs somehow are able to pull it off, but there's not enough of them We'll see how many buildings Romad gets. So the port is killed, and let's go see if the airstrips are killed. Yes, so there's no airstrips now for blue in the top. And if there's nowhere for these planes to land, then they will all explode at the end of their run here. And they do. Geez, so that's a big rocket. It's both of these trade routes and a bunch of the planes. Eco-wise, now Imphenzia's dropped below 1500. Romad's at less than 1600. Imphenzia's winning on this side of the map. Romad is like, that was great with the rocket. If the rocket can be defended again, maybe. But I still wonder if Imphenzia is actually winning on that side. This is one heck of a game. The two factories have built up a whole army now. This will be tough for Romad to defend. There's just so many artillery. It'll really be if Romad can use planes to clear out this many artillery. The helicopters are doing work. I mean, look at this multitask. There's another factory somewhere for Romad. I assume it's down here. Yeah, it is. To defend the left-hand side. The rocket is not going to live at this point. Romad only has 2 strikers that could try to defend here, and with 3 SAMs, I don't really think that they'd be able to do all that much. Imphenzia is starting to rebuild that trade route, working on it, at least. From Imphenzia's point of view, this rocket... Okay, so these units are actually on just attack move at the rocket. They're not even... They're only attacking these things because they're directly in the way of that attack command. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Here come the planes, let's see what they can do. It's a huge army from blue. Look at these attack lines. I mean, Imphenzia is going for it. And why not? This looks very good. There's not a lot of SAMs in with this army. But there's still a decent amount of interceptors at home, and there's not a lot of SAMs for red on this side, so if Imphenzia just keeps timing these fights and sending out the interceptors, it should be fine. Tons of SAMs on this side, which is ironic given that Romad destroyed all those airstrips. Big fight for the naval supremacy here. Red is going to definitely win this with 1 cruiser and 2 destroyers and as many missile boats against... I mean, these 2 poor little transport boats. This one even has an infantry on it, trying to take a fight against a cruiser. This is a artillery numbers mismatch. This first sortie from Red has done a great job. You can see how much that thins out units. Imphenzia has a bunch of units at home, but there's not even a lot of gas for Imphenzia. And the rocket is... That rocket actually lived. I'm a little bit shocked that the rocket lived. And that's crucial in this game. Because this goes from Imphenzia's winning on the left-hand side and stabling on the right. To Romad can maybe make like a play on this now. The gas is important to knock out because, as we discussed before, Imphenzia didn't have a ton of gas to be launching these strikers while trying to move all these boats and what other gas units there are. And now after this many sorties, this army's kind of thinned out a little bit for blue. And Romad might be able to at least stabilize and potentially counterpush. This 1 infantry taking out an airstrip would be enormous. Great decision from Imphenzia to keep in the mountains, I think, given the amount of units here. The one problem is that another rocket could be on the way. Romad doesn't have the money for it, so there isn't. Rockets cost 500, they're quite expensive. Here comes an airstrip from Imphenzia to try to transfer some of these planes over. And economy is super important. 1600 for Romad and 1400 for Imphenzia, who is about to lose this town again from a push of SAMs and infantry from red. This airstrip does go down. The infantry and the SAM get a medal. That's a pretty big play. I don't even know where these planes can land. Potentially at home. And Romad's going for another airstrip to replace these ones. This is a way safer location in general. If these tanks could break through the mountains, that would be super devastating. And that's maybe what Roma's going to try to do. Move the boats in, soak some fire. These are cruisers, so they actually do a decent job against artillery. And with all of these units, if they're moving up the coast under support of the Navy, it could work. Subs are on the right-hand side for Romad, which I think guarantees, like, naval supremacy here. Oh, I love this. This airport from Imphenzia on the right-hand side. I mean, it's kind of close to the water, so when Romad figures it out, the cruisers can destroy it pretty quick. Here goes the tanks across the coast, and they're going to get through, and then they're going to be very dangerous here. They could drive immediately to the town. They could destroy the airstrip, which I suspect is what they're going to do. And they're going to get it. Yeah, okay, so Imphenzia is going to clean up. Well, maybe not even. There's a lot of SAMs here. This is super... I mean, that was just... What a wild play. This rocket's just turned the whole game around. Because now, let's see what Romad has. So, like, there's still no rocket on the stand yet. But there's enough SAMs that this is just a clean defense. Romad's turning the tide of the battle on the left-hand side. And at this point, there's also something to be said that there's a fatigue factor playing this game. Like, you can see how I'm struggling to keep up bouncing between the two things. Look at it. Okay, so this is a great play to send the strikers from this side, but I guess the same thing's going to happen. They're just going to end up getting taken out by the SAMs, unfortunately. But you can see how I'm struggling to keep up with all the different fronts. So imagine being one of the players here. And we're 43 minutes into a game. A very close game. Artillery in the mountains is decent because all these infantry are going to move slower to try to get on top of the artillery, so the artillery are going to take a decent trade. They don't have any infantry in front of them as a meat shield, unfortunately, but they still should be fine. Imphenzia is down to 1 gas, which is super tough. The left-hand side gas, I want, like, potentially could be retaken. This one's very scary to take, given how big of a push this is. And we saw that Romad actually does have a rocket on the stand. Imphenzia can't see it. But it is there. It's about a third of the way done. The BM barracks. I'm kidding. I mean, it's very close to the front lines. But, I mean, the way that this is going, Romad... I will be able to take out the buildings potentially, but I don't think can push through the mountains, because now these 4 artillery pieces are going to show up. Even then, that barracks isn't, I don't think, too cocky. It looks like a pretty good push. Imphenzia is pushing down 2 more factories to try to deal with this sizable army from Romad now. But this is great. I mean, these 2 factories are huge, right? And they kind of contain Red's army on this side, as long as this part of Blue's army stays strong. Then here come all the planes from Imphenzia. Two tanks get by, unfortunately, for Blue, and they're going to take out that town, which is going to make the economic situation even tougher. 1 striker, I mean, how long does 1 striker take to destroy a refinery? It's a great, I mean, the helicopter, the airport over there is great. It's just going to take a while for that 1 striker to clean that up. Gas-wise, both players have about the same amount. This is great for Blue, using all these planes. They're avoiding the SAMs, they're destroying the land army of Red. Here comes Romad's interceptors and strikers, and we got a good old-fashioned dogfight with a little bit of red SAM support. I mean, that being said, blue SAMs are fighting as well. It's actually pretty even numbers, I think. Unless I'm seeing this totally wrong. Looks wild with the rockets and SAMs going everywhere. We're only really gonna know who took a better trade when the planes start flying home. I think it's relatively even. One of the things that was... the dynamic here is that red's planes are hasting and blue's planes are not. So generally the hasted planes might not fire as much, but they're moving quicker. I don't know, I think that looks pretty even. 4 SAMs now for red. What a fight. Super cool. A third rocket is now done for Romad. I mean, for Romad, it's... there's almost no point in firing this rocket anymore. It's now just going to be used for defensive purposes. It's going to cost a ton to maintain, but it's potentially worth it. Yeah, like a decent amount of planes got home for blue. I don't know. A lot of blue's ground army got wiped out there. The reason why red's starting to be able to push again, but the 2 new factories for Imphenzia are going to come into play and start producing. It's just really tough that all of this gets taken out. Now this once that happened, it becomes like a tough situation for Imphenzia to come back from. Like once that second rocket lived, I think that's the huge thing, because Imphenzia is going to have to try to rebuild all these towns and ports. But because of the income, they don't really have enough cash on hand. 1150 income for Imphenzia and 1722 for Romad, who launches a third rocket. And that's going to completely clear everything on land for blue here. So Romad's going to be able to cap all of this. And then it's just an eco squeeze, because Romad can start to just drop more production if need be. The only thing really missing on eco here is this port, I think, for Romad at this point. Can't believe I didn't see this for the first part of the game. These boats could destroy that refinery, and missile boats here is kind of cool. A cool idea. Every missile boat that is built, it means 1 less SAM needs to be built in some way. I don't know if what I just said is fair. You might want to just keep producing SAMs, but there's a decent amount of SAMs for red in this field, given the number of planes for blue. And Romad's going to send in all these planes to try to clean up this ground army. Imphenzia still has a decent amount of planes. These missile boats might come into play on this one. On this sortie from red. I mean, that's one of the good things that goes on is, as red would get close to the blue's base, Imphenzia would be able to use these things. We heard the ports going up. These strikers attacking the gas. That's a great snipe. Great snipe from Imphenzia. I mean, Romad's kind of running out of gas, especially with all these hasted planes. That being said, Imphenzia has just as much. And more importantly, this is very tough. Because Romad's going to get all of that economy now. 1141 income for Imphenzia. 1746 for Romad. Yeah, what a game. I think Imphenzia could have a chance to try to sweat it out and get a little bit turtley. But that being said, once all this wealth gets transferred, this rocket pad is just so frustrating. And now when Romad takes out this airport, I was almost wondering, there's no way that Imphenzia could have gone for bombers given the situation. Strikers are the way better choice. bombers would have been cool to be able to start picking away at Romad's main base, or like the starting location. But I guess in general, like, bombers are a more aggressive plane to build. And Imphenzia really had to be on, like, more defensive and surgical. So strikers, I mean, makes sense. I feel like strikers is probably the pound for pound best air unit still. Like, if you ever have any questions of, like, what's the one plane where I could build it exclusively out of an airport and it's not the worst decision necessarily, or like it's very solid, it's just the striker. Just build 100 strikers. We saw Dr. No do it on a video a few weeks ago or days ago or something. It's just mass strikers. The economy is going to continue to dip. This airstrip, or this airport, is going to get cleared out, and now it just becomes a question of when does Romad, I mean, destroy like subpens and docks and stuff, and then just rebuild factories in the front. If it were to come to that. So the SAMs actually defended the boat, which is super cool. Gotta love SAMs. Wildly close game. Very entertaining. I want to thank Romad for posting it in the match replays channel in the Discord. Join the Discord if you'd like to talk about the game or learn more or ask questions. It's a nice place to be. I hope you enjoyed this. Well played from both players. Hope you have a great night, day, evening, whatever it is. Enjoy. We'll see you later. Peace.